If ever your life could be a true crime podcast episode, then this podcast is for you. We're about to embark on a roller coaster of emotions, insights, survival, and stories about escape. So buckle up and let the journey begin.
I don't really have high hopes for thinking of something. Today's not the day for high hopes.
I thought you were going to say today's not the day for thinking.
Oh, I'm doing plenty of thinking. Just not what you're going to ask me. Okay, we'll see if it comes organically.
Okay.
Hi, Julie. How are you today?
Good. How are you? We're here.
We're here.
We're in the escape pod. Welcome in, everybody. I'm Julie.
I'm Charity. We heard as we were walking down to our studio, one of our other employees wanted to come down to the padded cell. So
yeah.
Right before that, I was prepping her on me being gone next week and all the things she's going to have to concern herself with since I will not be present, and that might be why she needs the padded cell.
Well, next week, if she requests a visit, I'll let her in.
Give her a key.
Yep. I have the key. I hold the key to the escape pod. You don't know what you're escaping from today. There's probably too many things to list.
Well, I know. Here's why. Here's the deal. So my husband and our son once again got us into, he does a lot of, listens to podcasts on health related things. And so like the cold plunging, I've been doing that for a year. Mm-hmm. Hate it, love it. And then the latest thing has been, so I did intermittent fasting for quite a long time.
Okay.
Probably longer than a year, long time. And then as my hormones started fluctuating as I'm, aging, escaping aging, there we go.
That's you go.
And I'm fighting. And it's not the aging part that that concerns me. It's okay, what is this body thing? Like it's a foreign object. It's not anyway. So I went through this whole phase. And so I'm like, the doctors and the researchers are all saying, well, maybe, intermittent fasting isn't working because of these hormones and blah, 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 blah. And so I'm like, okay, I'll stop doing it. And so I would make myself eat something in the morning. And I like breakfast when it's like, it's a lazy weekend and it's brunch time and it's like an experience, not because I have to eat. So I hate eating breakfast. It takes time. I have to make something. I have to think of something. I just want to go. So we have started like doing 48-hour fasts. And it's supposed to be good for a lot of things. Yeah. Like your mental clarity, it like gives your body a reset so you're not focused on digestion, and it like helps your cells blah, blah, blah. It's like there's all these major health benefits. So we did it a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. It was really hot that week. We started on a Monday. No problems Monday. But I didn't want to be in the house like dinner time. Yeah. And we're the kind of people who will finish dinner by 5:30. We eat early, and then we don't eat at all again after. We don't snack or have dessert or anything like that. So I'm like, well, I really wasn't that hungry. It's more psychological. I don't want to be in the house. So we started walking. Well, I mean, we went for a walk. We always walk, but went for a walk, and it was like 98 degrees that day. Right. I had electrolytes with me. It wasn't like I wasn't hydrated because I did nothing but drink water all day. Well, I got heat stroke. So I only made it to 40 hours in my 48-hour fast because of the heat stroke, I think. So I got really sick. I couldn't regulate my body temperature. I was vomiting. And then I couldn't keep fluids down, which was a real problem when you're fasting, which is why I finally had to break it. So waited a few weeks, got everything, making sure I'm stabilized and all that stuff, and started doing it again. So we did it yesterday. So I'm done at 4 o'clock this afternoon.
Oh, nice.
And so I think that's like now, I don't know if it's because I see the finish line and I know I get to eat. Yeah. But I have been starving all day. So like hunger pangs. And I'm like, really? And yesterday was fine. I felt great. And today, I feel good energy wise, mental clarity, all that stuff. I'm just really hungry and it's making me mad.
Few more hours.
So I'm escaping hunger.
Oh, I would be escaping the fast. Like, where's the nearest food? I'm escaping. I felt this way all week. Construction season.
Oh, good Lord.
It's so bad in some key places. So it's cleared up now on the road that I take in. I can't go this route during the school year because I have to drop my kids off. But the route that I can take not during the school year, which is quick, both directions the other day. Both directions. And lots of traffic because we're a tourist destination and there's lots of extra people.
And also all these people are moving here.
And lots of people moving here.
Population explosion plus tourism explosion. So it's
plus still construction, which no offense to construction workers because I have always called it is a necessary evil. You can't go without it, but it is a pain in the butt while it's going on. So there
have an extra million people in your city.
I was like, how is it going both ways all of a sudden? But it was like a day-long project, but it happened to be the day where I had to like go home in the middle of the day, which I don't usually have to do. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like everywhere I went took twice as long to get there. So if I can escape that down here, which we can for a little while, I'm content. I'm good for now.
Speaking of construction, somebody messed up. Wasn't the city. Had to be the county. Anyway, so we had dinner plans with some friends in Deadwood.
Okay.
And Tim was just ready. Like, I don't want to wait till dinner. I just want to get out of town. Let's go. So we took the scenic route. And we haven't done the whole...
Oh, don't take the scenic route right now.
Go take 385.
Nope.
Oh, you can't.
Nope.
And
that's major construction.
They don't let you know until you're at the very end of Sheridan Lake Road.
Yeah.
And it's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So he's like, well, let's go check it out. I'm like, it said it was closed. Are you sure you want to do that? And then so I pulled up my maps and it's like sending us clear around Pactola, right? Like the really bad dirt roads. So anyway, he's like, well, we're in it now. I mean, because what are you going to do? Go all the way back to and through town and hit the interstate. Like it's going to
be the same probably 6 1/2 dozen at the other.
So we're like, okay, we go and we get behind someone from Iowa.
No hills.
Clearly a tourist who doesn't understand the back roads concept.
Right.
In a Jeep. So he could have probably navigated them well, was just choosing not to do so. And we're like, hey, hi, like we're on a timeline. And he was going like 8.
Oh, wow.
I mean, like super slow. Like I literally could have gotten out of my car and run past him. Which I was considering doing. And so finally, you know, he kind of, I think he flicked something out the side of the Jeep. Tim thinks he's waving us around.
Oh.
I don't think he was waving us around.
Oh.
So we found a stretch of road where we could get past him, and we, passed him. And he's screaming at us, being a jerk. And I'm like, oh, well, okay, I guess you're going to eat our dust now, butthead. So he was just rude, and it was almost like he was doing it intentionally, like, I've got the power to keep you from getting to where you're going by doing my 8 to 10 miles an hour on this road.
That's nuts.
It was, so it took us a while, and we get to Deadwood. Tim looks at my car. He goes, well, I guess I'm washing your car. I'm like, I guess you are.
I know somebody who lives out that direction, and they say they, like, even at their driveway, they have to wait for a pilot car. I'm like, wow.
No.
Because of just where they happen to be. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yep. I'm like, that.
So I can concur with the getting away from construction thing. At least sign it better. Like, before you leave Rapid City, hey, 385 is closed, headed west or
this
north
goes
or
on
whatever.
For a long ways.
Don't
for
go
sure.
this way. So anyway.
Man,
That's
okay.
that.
So I only know that this is a roller coaster we're going on today, and that it's really, I think the technical term she used earlier was bonkers for the story you're going to share. Dive in.
Berserk, bananas, bonkers. It's all the crazy B words.
Yeah.
I feel like this one could be a graphic novel.
Oh.
Because it is so, you're going to think I wrote this and made it like I
Imagined
it.
Right. Nope. Truth is stranger than fiction.
Because it is like something out of a comic book.
Okay.
I don't read comic books, but it's not, it's crazy.
Okay.
All right. Okay. June 2020 or 2003. So a while back.
So a while back.
This is over in the UK. The Greater Manchester Police were called to the scene of a stabbing. The victim was a 14-year-old boy that we'll refer to as John, not his real name, because they do things differently over there. He had been stabbed in an alleyway after he had been out with his best friend, who is 16-year-old Mark. Okay. Also not his real name. And Mark is the one who called the paramedics after the incident. So John's taken to the hospital. He's been stabbed in the chest lightly. He'd been stabbed deeply in the abdomen, piercing his kidney and liver and causing his gallbladder to have to be removed. And the surgeries that he had to undergo caused John to almost die on the operating tables like twice, I think. So blood from the wounds had pooled inside his torso, and it restricted the movement of his diaphragm, which inhibited his lungs, so they had to put him on a respirator. So this was a very tragic episode. So meanwhile, Mark, his best friend, is working with police to piece the event together and told them about a man who had come upon them in this alleyway in dark jeans and a dark hoodie, stabbed his young friend, and ran off.
Okay.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay. Now we're going to leave that. I'm going to leave you cliffhanging for a little bit. So we're going to go back to the beginning and circle back to how and why these two boys were in this alleyway.
Yeah.
Okay. So first, we're going to introduce the victim, John. So John was a sullen, withdrawn boy from a very early age. He really didn't know like his heritage or his identity. And that can make a kid feel like an outsider by itself, right? But he also, around the age of kindergarten, here, I don't know what they call it in the UK, discovered that the man he and his mom were living with was not his father. And he had no recollection of any other man before that. So, you know, he's coming to that realization that he never knew his biological father. And even when parents suck, kids need to know their parents. Right? Like, I always joke about erasing mine, but still, you know,
Well, the mystery is...
It's hard.
It's
really,
people.
really
We hear
hard.
lots of those
It's
stories.
really hard. So when asked about it, his mom later told John's therapist that bio dad had abducted him when he was a baby and was both physically and sexually abusive to her. So she took the baby, little John, and split. Evidently, the guy had a problem with drugs and all that kind of fun stuff. So this guy bails, the guy he realizes is not his father, bails on the family when John was 7, leaving his mom and younger sister to fend for themselves. So he packs up. They have no choice but to move to a smaller house, something that they can afford. And his mom was really depressed over the situation. And to top it off, his school life was becoming very unhappy and he wasn't managing things well. He was super smart, really good student, smart kid. But kids in both elementary and middle schools bullied and teased him incessantly about his olive skin.
Okay.
So that's something that I found really interesting because that I'm an olive-skinned person, and that doesn't happen in the United States where olive-skinned people are targeted for racist comments. But in where he was living, they called him Packy.
Okay.
And teased him about being gay simply because most of his friends were girls. So, you know, he's just getting piled on. And again, he's dealing, maybe those things by themselves wouldn't have broken him.
Sure.
But he's dealing with all this other stuff, you know, heritage, like he didn't know his heritage. And then when he figures out, oh, okay, not only am I, quote, olive-skinned, I don't know who my dad is. I don't understand what's going on. So he gets even more withdrawn when the bullying just continues to persist. And no matter where he went, he started getting paranoid that people were talking about him, thinking he was a terrorist and all these kind of things. So that's the kind of things they were
saying to
teasing
him
about.
and yeah.
So he had obviously no control over how he was being treated. And so he became obsessive over the things he could control. And I mean, I talk about that with guests about when I was young, the things I could control have stuck with me to this day. And that's part of how you can manage difficult situations is control the things you can't, or the things you can, because the things you can't, you have no power over. So he would become obsessive over like how he dressed, how he bathed himself, the order of his bedroom, and everything had to be in a very, very specific order. And I am that way to this day with my environment, not necessarily. Actually, if I think about it, I probably do things in the same order every time, but I think a lot of us do that. So he became really over obsessive on these things. So his mom, meanwhile, is not wanting to be lonely anymore. So she eventually moves another man into the house. And then all of her attention is being directed towards this new relationship, right? And so John begins spending all of his time in his room. And this was how he came to enter the world of internet chat rooms when that was kind of up and coming. And he could be anyone he wanted to be. He could take control over his life. So at 13 at the time, years old, he was given a laptop by his mom to help him with homework. And that sealed it for him. He became addicted to online chat rooms and lost in fantasy worlds where he could be all the things that he was not in real life. So he wasn't olive-skinned. He wasn't, all of the things that he was getting flack for in his school life. He eventually stopped joining his family for meals, which stunted he's kind of a small kid, and it stunted his physical development even more because he was just hanging out in his room all day.
Probably, yeah.
All that mattered to him, honestly, this was his nourishment, was being on the internet. He later talks about how it gave him a buzz. Those were those dopamine hits.
Right.
So he was literally not just, I'm addicted to this. Like he was really addicted to this. And so, to kind of rabbit hole quickly, dopamine, of course, I tell our guests this too, it makes us feel good when we accomplish something, a goal, a task. Small, large, doesn't matter. You get various levels of dopamine hits from accomplishing something. Eating is also one of those things. You cannot actually accomplish a goal without dopamine. So little bits of dopamine are released when we hit metrics that lead us to that big dose when we hit a really big major goal. Or like, when we get a $500,000 check at One Heart, that is really happy dopamine levels right there.
If anybody wants to send one of those, that would be great.
Hey, we would love you forever.
I could use that dopamine hit right now.
But that's why it feels so good.
Yeah.
Like when you accomplish something, it's just like instead of like, next, it's like, it feels really good. That's what that is. It can also be highly addictive.
Sure.
So things like cocaine, nicotine, shopping, social media, gambling are all releasing dopamine. And so now he has this combination of like the addiction to the whole internet in a social sphere. This was kind of before the real social media.
Right, because we're talking early 2000s.
Yeah, we're talking very early. Yep. But fun note, I took a class one time with a doctor by the name of Annette Bosworth, and she said if your first impulse when you wake up in the morning is to check social media, this could be a sign of addiction. Oh, okay. In John's case, it was connecting him with people in internet chat rooms, and that's what fed his need. He was like interacting with 30 people every night.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And that's none of them in person.
None of them in person.
Right.
Yet.
Okay.
But the danger of chat rooms
is you don't know who you're talking to.
You do not know who you're talking to.
Yeah.
Which is a really great thing for predators, right?
Right.
Okay. So now let's jump over to Mark, the older 16-year-old best friend of John. Mark, they were total opposites. Mark was the son of working class parents. He had a good, stable upbringing, like strong and athletic and popular in school, popular with the girls. His grades were okay. He wasn't like the smartest guy. Athletic, played soccer, well-mannered. He was bound for business school if all went well. So he had, ambition in life, but total opposite of John.
Okay.
So But Mark, too, was getting into the internet chat room thing, mostly to hook up with girls because, I mean, have you met a 16-year-old boy? It turns out he was quite the romantic, and he would fall really fast and hard for just about any girl pretty quickly. So not long after his foray into this chat room world, this was February of 2003, he met a girl named Rachel in this Manchester teens chat room. So where the local teenagers would jump in and get to know each other. And she was cute, blonde, fit. She worked at a local gym, started flirting with him. And then by April, so this started in February, by April he was all in, head over heels in love with this girl. He kept asking her to turn on her camera so he could actually see her in person instead of just her picture. You're already making faces. Just wait.
Okay.
I cannot wait to see your face through the rest of this. Like, I wish we should do that. I could take screenshots and we could put them on Instagram or something. But and this is viable. She said she'd had a bad experience with someone before when they did turn on their cameras, and so she was reluctant. But he was super patient with her. I mean, he's in love with her. This is like okay. So they chatted a lot, and then her brother John, who ends up becoming best friends with Mark.
Okay.
So it's the same John.
Okay.
Is Rachel's brother, enters the chat room, and that's how they meet.
Okay.
Mark and John meet, and then it's like, oh, well, you must be pretty cool since you're Rachel's brother, kind of a thing. So they were 2 years apart in age, but they really had a lot of things in common, even though it didn't sound like it earlier, like their taste in movies, the sports they like, their favorite movies, all that kind of a thing. They shared all of that in common.
Okay.
And so Mark would go on and on with John. Now he's recruiting John to help him arrange a real life meeting with Rachel, right?
Sure.
And, you know, he would flat out tell Rachel, Mark would, that he was falling in love with her. And John had no problems like using his webcam or anything. So he could see John and it's just like, hey, you know, your sister has this hang up. Yeah. Some things happened, blah, 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 blah. So, but Mark, you know, started getting a little frustrated. Rachel still refused, although their relationship deepened and their online chats kind of turned sexual in nature. Rachel would ask Mark to strip off his clothes and perform other tasks for her. And he finally told her he loved her and she returned the sentiment. So now she's ready to meet in real life.
They're in. Oh.
So they're ready now. He's kind of proven himself and Mark was so excited. So I'm going to take another little tangent. This is still April.
Okay.
Another person enters their chat room. Excuse me while I escape the invisible and whatever in my throat.
Frog in your throat.
Yeah. So a new person enters the chat room. His name is Kevin. And this person was like an openly gay, very flamboyant, used pink font in all of his chats, and would post some really outlandish things about himself, including being a stalker and having a foot fetish. So a lot of things to gain attention, a lot of hot items, right? So Mark learned.
Is it weird that I'm less concerned about the foot fetish than I am that he is an admitted stalker?
Oh, he backs it up. So Mark learns that these statements, because I mean, when you see it at first, it's kind of like, oh, whatever. Someone just wants attention. Right?
Yeah.
But Mark starts to actually be concerned because Rachel and John were telling him that Kevin had begun scaring and threatening them.
Okay.
So he like gets in this chat room and he's like scanning everybody and then figuring out how he's going to go after them. So John even told Mark that he suspected Kevin was stalking him.
Ooh.
And so after Kevin started targeting Mark, or soon after, Kevin started targeting Mark and would give him details he would only know if he'd actually been stalking him.
Ooh.
And so now Mark's starting to get concerned. And it scared him so much that when Kevin demanded Mark show him his feet and masturbate online or else he'd kidnap Rachel. So, Mark complied. And although deeply humiliated, he felt it was the moral right, honorable thing to do to protect the girl he loved, right? So speaking of Rachel, back to Rachel, their real world meeting was to take place soon. Mark went to the meeting point, giddy, excited, butterflies in his stomach, over the moon, and he was finally going to get to see more than just a photo of Rachel.
No, he's not.
And he waited. And he waited, and Rachel never showed up.
No, she didn't.
So he ran home to the chat room to see if he could track her down there, and there was still no sign of Rachel. But Kevin was there, and Kevin was waiting for him with news that he'd kidnapped Rachel and had her gang raped, tortured, and killed.
What?
And so Mark, for reasons only he could explain, did not go to police or even report this to his parents. He felt personally guilty and started failing school. And John, too, was now grieving the loss of his sister. So this brought the two boys closer together. You know, it was just bizarre. And no one still knows who Kevin is, where Kevin is, but Kevin is still this factor. But since losing Rachel, Mark was less inclined to be online. And when he...
Yes, I would hope so.
But then when he was, he wanted to talk to girls, I think maybe to forget about Rachel or try to move on. So he meets another girl named Lindsay, falls for her just like he fell for Rachel. And she, too, convinced Mark to perform sex acts for her. And then she dropped a bomb. This is where it gets fun. If you weren't having fun yet, this is where it gets fun.
I'm just weirded out.
You're trying to figure it out. I can see you. I can see your brain working.
I have a theory.
Okay. So Lindsay was a junior secret MI6 agent.
Oh, well, that's new.
That is very new. And he'd never met a real-life spy before, right? I mean...
And he's still not going to. I'm just going to throw that out there.
But honestly, red flag number one. If a spy is worth their salt, you're never gonna know. Right? I'm just like...
Valid point.
This kid wasn't an idiot, but he was such an idiot. Okay, anyway. So Lindsay said that John was under protection. So back to John. Buddy John, little buddy John, was unknowingly being targeted by this Kevin creep, and Lindsay was hoping to recruit Mark to help her track Kevin down. They wanted to find Kevin. He was a danger. They wanted to eradicate Kevin.
And a spy starts in a chat room to do that.
How cool is that?
I'd like to say that we can chalk some of this up to it being new and 20 years ago and blah, blah, blah. I feel like this could happen today.
This could easily happen today.
Yeah. Like people want so much to have connections that are personal without being personal.
Yeah.
That it's dangerous.
It might even be
in
worse
some
now.
cases. Yes. All right, go on.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. I love it. So days later, Mark receives a post-dated message telling him that Lindsay was killed in the line of duty, having failed her mission. And she urges Mark to fulfill her mission to protect John. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Someone gets stabbed,
kid.
Julie.
I know. So
and
sorry.
you're laughing. Okay. So then Rachel suddenly reappears. She's not dead. And Mark is overjoyed, but then realized something was wrong. So finally he's getting out of idiot mode. She claimed she was held captive while in a coma.
Did they watch Days of Our Lives before
I
they
said
went
the
in the
same
chat
thing.
room?
I'm like, this is a freaking soap opera. And also that she had delivered Mark's baby. And Mark's like, wait, what? We've never even met. How can that be? Oh, my God. He probably believed in immaculate conception in this case because he was believing everything else. But Rachel had been only missing for a few weeks. They'd never met in real life. And Mark didn't understand, but Rachel vanished again before he could get answers. So now he's intrigued, right? He's trying to figure this out. So he's back in the chat room trying to figure it out, asking John questions, seeing if John can help him figure it out. And then a woman joins the chat room. She's married, 40 years old. Weird, considering this is the Manchester Teens chat room. But she was a more senior member of the MI6.
Oh.
So spy number 2. And she was also trying to recruit Mark's help, telling Mark that she was also very sexy
Okay.
Because a 40-year-old woman should be telling a 16-year-old boy that they're sexy.
Okay.
Okay, this is what, 527 red flags so far? All right. So he was skeptical, give him some credit, but also a teenage boy. So he went along out of curiosity. And since Lindsay had trusted him, Janet claimed that she trusted Mark too and wanted to recruit him, and that the Secret Service wanted to train Mark up and he would be compensated for his time. So now millions of pounds are on the line.
Okay.
Dollars, money. So, I mean, this kid's fantasies are coming to life, right? He's riches, sex, spy drama, mystery. I mean, this kid just won the 16-year-old boy lottery. All right. So, of course, he accepts the offer to work with them. But first, he needed to be tested out to prove that he could fulfill a top secret mission. Kind of like a biker gang initiation or something.
Okay.
So, I mean, in my opinion. So he was required to act as a bodyguard for an important Manchester teenager named James Bell. But Mark couldn't let anyone, even James, know that he was acting as his bodyguard. So he had to try to fulfill this mission without being able to explain why he was hanging out with this person.
As all good spies do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you're wondering why this teenager was so important, right?
Yeah.
I can't say this was the next part with a straight face. Promise I'm not making this up. Okay, but James Bell, this kid, was so important because the Queen of England had trusted him out of all the people on the entire planet with the code to a safe full of jewels that happened to be at the bottom of the ocean, Julie.
Nice. That is an important person right
So
there.
this kid, I mean, he's got it going on. And wouldn't you know it, James turns out to be Mark's best friend, John.
Oh.
Oh. And instead of being suspicious like he should have, he was very excited because they were already best friends. It would be so much easier to spend time together to protect him. And Mark took his responsibility very seriously because he wanted to be inducted into the MI6, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sexy agent Janet was pleased with his progress.
Who doesn't want to be part of the MI6?
Well, you know, there is some appeal when you watch like the action movies and you've got the hot chick in the dress with the slit up to her waist, kicking butt. Like,
right.
Hey, I wouldn't mind being
You
in
would do that?
physique and be able to kick people's asses. Yeah.
Can I look like that and not be a spy? That would be
That'd
fun.
also be fun.
That'd be more fun.
I still think being able to
All
debilitate big, bulky men would be.
Sure.
That'd be kind of awesome. Anyway, so sexy agent Janet was very pleased with his progress and started messaging him to tell him everywhere he and John and Ben and like, hey, we have agents watching you, tracking you, da-da-da-da-da. So Mark knew other agents were following his progress and he felt like that good pat on the back, da-da-da-da. So he's doing well. Janet gives him a new task. Next, he has to get John/James, the special boy that the Queen of England is relying upon, out of school with the code to the safe at the bottom of the ocean. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
There is a lot of trauma here, I promise.
Okay.
Okay. But he needed to get John out of school without raising suspicion. So Mark goes to the school the next day, tells them that he was sent by John's mother to take John to a dentist appointment, and it actually worked. But then the school kind of rethought it and went, maybe something's off. So then they call mom. She gets concerned because there's no dentist appointment. I don't know what's going on. So she, as she should, checks John's computer and finds the chat room messages all involving sexy agent Janet.
Mm-hmm.
So did you catch that?
Mm-hmm.
John's computer,
Mm-hmm.
not Mark's computer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So John's mom goes out to search for her kid and finds him at Mark's house. She talks to Mark's parents and says, blah, 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 here's all the stuff that's just happened. Your kid took my kid out of school and there's all this stuff on his computer. And so, of course, Mark's parents search his computer and find similar messages, also from sexy agent Janet. Both boys were grounded from online chat rooms, but both, just like kids do, figure out ways to get around parents' restrictions. So Mark gets in. Janet's waiting for him. Mark doesn't yet know that Janet was also on John's chats.
Okay.
So Mark is just an idiot. The
Right.
poor kid I don't think business school was going to work out for him.
He was looking for love.
He was looking for love and then
And it clouded
excitement and then riches and then importance
Right.
and then all these things. And oh boy, that poor kid.
He
Anyway.
watched a few too many spy movies.
Yeah. I think they said the boys is what they bonded over at first. Their favorite movie was Catch Me If You Can, which was.
Yeah.
So anyway, Janet was waiting for him and she gives him a task of national security that if he or she or they failed, she could lose her job and possibly her life, Julie.
Yeah.
Okay. She wouldn't tell him why, but part of Mark's cover needed to be making John, the one he's supposed to protect, look gay by performing a sex act on John. So undercover agents were watching at all times, she told him, and Mark carried through with the latest assignment. They engaged in oral sex, blah, 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 blah. Mark now had successfully passed his initiation to MI6 and he was to be awarded with meeting top diplomats, getting a gun, money, all kinds of things. A 16-year-old.
Yeah. Now I'm irritated.
Yeah. So then he was asked if he could kill someone, and he answered yes, he could. Janet handed him his first real assignment now that he was initiated. The target was John, his best friend. He asked Janet about it, like, wait, are you sure this is what you want me to do? And she corroborated everything, and he was promised a ton of money and sexual favors, which should also be, what are we up to now? Flags?
Many.
1,400?
Yeah.
Okay.
Many red flags.
He was concerned and struggling about it, but John, she said, had an inoperable brain tumor, thus justifying the hit. And John validated that he did indeed have a brain tumor, so Mark believed him. Mark was sad, but now he felt that he could kill John as a mercy killing. So the brain tumor made it easier for him to do that. But he hadn't been trained in guns, so he asked Janet what he should do, and she suggested a knife. So June now of 2003 comes around. Mark is now assigned as an MI6 agent number 47695. He was official, and
That's the number of red flags we're up to.
that 47.
That's what that stands for.
I
Yes.
think so.
Yes.
So he verifies the plan and asks Janet what to say to him, and she tells him to carry out the mission somewhere quiet and tell him that he loved him before he drew his final breath. And that Janet would arrive as a disguised as a detective to be sure that he wouldn't be arrested for the act. So she would be ready on standby when the act happened. She told him to commit the act barehanded and then tell the police that the attacker committed the act with gloves so they understood why his prints were on the knife. And she even gave him a code, 6969. That was an abort code for the mission.
I'm rolling my eyes.
You are. In fact, they're
way back
all
in my
white
head.
right now. Yeah. And if he heard that code, abort immediately. So he and John have an outing planned on this very fateful day. They arrive at the town square where they went knife shopping together. And Mark was sick about what was to come. But he was paranoid that other MI6 agents were watching him. He kept listening, to whatever in the stores or wherever for a code. No code came, so they carried on. They were taking a walk in a nearby park and then finally made their way to this dead-end alley. The code still didn't come. And so he was hoping it was just another test, to prove that he could do it. And Mark finally told John what he had to do, but John didn't run away. And he said, "I love you, bro," and he stabbed him. And Mark whispered, "Shh, people will hear you." And John is yelling, "You killed me, don't say that." And Mark stabbed him again when he realized that the first stab hadn't done the job. And then he waited for Janet to arrive just as planned. But he didn't call the ambulance right away. So they're waiting there in the alley for probably about 20 minutes. There's no sign of Janet.
No.
Sexy agent Janet. He finally calls the paramedics. "Me mate's been stabbed," he said. An unknown man randomly attacked his friend. Local police released a report and a sketch with this phony assailant. And as I said earlier, John was rushed to the hospital, and after quite the ordeal and multiple surgeries, he did actually survive.
Okay.
The police, meanwhile, are tracking down CCTV footage of the boys. They were seen together, but no one else had entered that alley.
No.
There was no indication of the man in black who had allegedly attacked John, so Mark, 16-year-old, was arrested for the attempted murder. And during questions by police, John denied that Mark had stabbed him, but after seeing CCTV footage, he admitted Mark's involvement. So he was still trying to protect him.
Mm-hmm.
And when Mark was questioned, he told them that he heard voices in his head that told him to do it because he didn't want to out MI6. And he was waiting for Janet to come and rescue him.
Dang it, Janet.
Dang it, Mark. Come on, get it together, dude. After weeks of waiting, he finally tells police everything. Sunken treasure, secret agents, super agents. I mean, this kid totally believed.
He believed everything.
He believed it.
Oh.
So who was Janet? Detectives thought that he was a crime of a pedophile ring, or pedophile if we're in the UK, when at first when they studied the contents of the computer.
Okay.
They had tons of data to go through and finally figured out that Janet was actually John.
Mm-hmm.
And so was Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
And so was Kevin. And it ended up being 6 different personalities that were all John.
Oh, wow.
They all had their own unique personas, their own unique turns of phrase, unique codes. But this is how he got busted. 5 of the users misspelled the word maybe in a really odd way. MYBYE. And that's how they got busted. So they were all created and managed by one person. Janet had incited the attempted murder of John, so police search John's computer and see that secret sexy agent Janet Dobinson had accessed his device too. And when all the plans were finalized for the murder, the only person home was John.
Weird.
So they tracked it all down.
Oh.
So essentially, his childhood was scarred by bullying. He was addicted to online chat rooms. Moody, sullen, fell in love with Mark. He was gay.
Okay.
So that part was true. And he pulled Mark into this wild fantasy. And John became more depressed and concocted his own suicide attempt through this Janet persona. And he wanted Mark to tell him he loved him and die that way.
Oh.
So it turns out John was quite the romantic too.
Yeah.
In a really sick and twisted way.
Wow. So I was thinking the whole time, either it is just John. I did wonder if there might be one other person who was all the other people.
Nope.
But I had a sneaking suspicion that it was just him. That is sad in so many ways.
Right.
Super sad for John. So do they think...
For Mark, too. I mean, good Lord, the guy didn't stand a chance.
But did John potentially have, besides the kind of early childhood trauma, the not knowing who he is, is there a chance he really did have kind of different personalities that would come out? Nope, it was just the online personalities. Okay.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yep. And so 3 months later, he was arrested for inciting his own attempted murder.
Ugh.
And Mark, of course, was charged with attempted murder, and he was crushed when he was told who Janet, Rachel, and Kevin and all the other people really were. And John was he was a very bright young man. He was seamlessly able to slip between these personas and these characters. And they each had different backstories, text patterns, like I said, email addresses, vernacular, all of it. But all of it was designed to keep him in contact with Mark, the guy he was in love with. So when they arrived at court, they were not allowed to speak to each other. Mark pleaded guilty. John pleaded guilty. The judge told Mark he was gullible and John sophisticated. Very kind. But Mark really, 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 really believed he was working with MI6. And the investigation uncovered that John had almost chickened out of being stabbed. He had second thoughts when they were downtown that day. But he was so in love with Mark that he left and then went back to be with him.
Wow.
And, of course, he had no real control to broadcast the 6969 abort code over where the public square would hear. But and officials made a point to say, and I thought this was very kind of them as well, that both sets of parents were very careful in monitoring their children's internet access. They didn't do anything wrong.
It's both frustrating because you are just like, dude, come on. But also heartbreaking.
I know.
Right?
It is absolutely heartbreaking.
I guess I'm glad in the end, physically at least, they ended up being okay. Right? Like survived a stabbing and an attempt to basically take yourself out by somebody else's hand. Wow. Man, you would need some therapy after that, wouldn't you?
I think I already do. I mean, reading some of these like text message chat room strings and all of that and just, yeah.
I think it is a sign, though, of, again, the desire for connection. But a lot of people have anxieties about actually having the connection. Like you want it, but to get it and maintain it or to do it in a healthy way, it's scary and it's hard. And relationships are hard, right? Romantic relationships can be very hard as a teenager.
You know, it wasn't as accepted
Correct.
to come out of the closet. And so he had that weight as well where it perhaps wasn't safe. I mean, he was already being bullied just for olive skin, which is not, he can't do a damn thing about that.
Right.
And he's homosexual. He can't do anything about that. And, you know, so I'm sure he was protecting that for all he was worth. And this was the way to, like, you know, still be a teenage boy and through these personas get to somehow interact with another, the boy, the object of his desire. So it was just really, it is really sad on both sides.
But you should also never have to trick somebody into liking you.
Yeah.
And I know that's,
on
it sounds so simple.
Yeah.
But
when your self-worth is so
of course,
low,
I understand.
You know, he's been abandoned. He's been all the stuff. Just,
but if you have to be
to
something besides yourself, like that's your first red flag in a romantic relationship. I think if you have to pretend to be something you're not, that sucks, right? And so eventually it can be a reason to become resentful if you realize, like, well, I presented myself this way, but that's not really, I mean, I'm making this very simplistic, but I just think if you have to trick somebody and not to be who you are to make a connection, like right there, maybe that's just not the person you're supposed to be making a connection with. But he obviously, I mean, he had a million things going on in his head. So it's.
And now Mark has, it would be really interesting. I would love to see an interview with you and Mark now that he's, you know, 20 years older and.
Be like, Marky Mark, please tell me you're not as gullible as
like
you were when you were 16 years old.
Like, what would the projection be?
You would trust nobody.
He'd trust nobody. Or he's still that romantic at heart and is going to give someone the benefit of the doubt. And
I bet it was, well, I shouldn't say that. I was going to say, I bet it was a while before he gave somebody the benefit of the doubt. But
anyway, so that's the one that I think should be.
That was a wild ride.
The comic book, because it can't be real, but it was.
Spygate soap opera style.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back and wrap up the Escape Pod for this week. Need an early morning boost or midday pick-me-up? Check out the Homebrew Coffee Shop, a coffee shop with a cause in the heart of the One Heart campus. Homebrew is home to delicious coffee, sweet treats, breakfast, and lunch items, a great place to meet friends or host small group meetings. Homebrew, located at 201 Kansas City Street in Rapid City. Open Monday through Friday from 6:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. Homebrew, where you'll find hope for a home in every cup. Welcome back into the Escape Pod, folks. We are about to wrap things up for this episode. It was a twisty-turny, wild ride. We were off-roading it for a while, talking about the chat room and the many, many, many red flags.
How many red flags?
47,000 something.
Okay.
Somewhere along those lines.
All the red flags.
Wild story. I did say during the break, this was fairly early on in chat world times. And so I think to some extent, though, again, very gullible teenage boy, but the idea that people might not represent themselves as who they really are. Like, it didn't dawn on people all the time, that you could be in a conversation with somebody who was not who they said they were.
Right.
And so in that regard, going back 20 plus years, that makes a little sense.
So suspect everybody. Be suspicious of everybody. Don't trust anybody.
And don't give out.
Make them freaking earn it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I also do, even though he clearly had a lot of, mental and emotional issues going on, John, quote unquote John, who played many characters in this movie, again, just like you shouldn't have to trick anybody into liking you, he went way beyond in asking Mark to do some of the things that he did. Like, not okay. Your own mental state doesn't make it okay for some of those requests
So
he
was essentially the predator.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now they're both in jail. Well, I don't know if they still are, but.
Right. But that was the initial sentencing.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
So even 14-year-olds can be predators.
Sure.
Based, their trauma, their loneliness, their isolation.
Yep.
So also moral of the story, people stop freaking bullying people.
Yeah.
Stop teasing. I mean, my God, grow up.
Yeah.
Like, it's enough.
Yeah.
If we, like that, I swear,
yeah.
I don't understand it.
Well, and adults will look at kids like, oh, they're bullies. Like, kids are mean, teenagers are mean. I know a lot of mean adults.
Yeah.
Like,
where are the kids learning it from?
Right.
They don't come into the world going, oh, I'm going to be a bully.
Yeah.
It's like, come on.
Yeah. So
Just
we want
enough people.
We're going to escape that bad behavior, we hope, someday in our lifetimes. For now, though, let's turn to happier
Well, we have our
thoughts.
little oasis at One Heart. Like, we don't tolerate it
No.
with staff or with anybody. So you want to be a bully or start rumors about someone, I will show you the door.
You have shown people the
I
door.
have shown people the door. I mean, it just needs to be a safe place.
Yeah.
For
Both
people's
to live and to
transformation
work.
journeys. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I take it very seriously. People think I'm a hard ass, but
Well, you are a little bit. Again, it's not an either or. It can be both and.
okay. We should start keeping a running tally of all the names Julie is calling me.
Well, that's not.
Neurotic was one. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, there's just moments. What are you escaping on a different subject?
Food. I'm going to food.
You're escaping to food. Dinner. Do you know what
yes.
you're having for dinner
Not yet.
tonight?
Not yet. I might have a text waiting from my husband, but
Okay.
I'm like, what do you want to do? I'm freaky hungry right now. And he's like, you want to go out? I'm like, yes.
T-minus
This might
2 hours
backfire.
and 23 minutes.
But I mean, if you fast and then you can't go gorge, right? You have to
No.
be smart about it. So it's like, what could I eat that is going to be super enjoyable for a low volume of food? But
Yeah,
anyway.
because otherwise, like, your stomach hurts. Mm-hmm. It's shrunk.
Then you
in the
stop
last-
everything, all the processes you just kind of kick-started. You like stopped it in its
Right.
tracks. So today might be hard for me to like, or who knows, my stomach could be shrunk so much that I just can't eat much.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big eater anyway, but so we'll see what happens. But I'm really hungry, so I'm so looking forward to just food. And it could be any food right now. I'm about ready to attack that bag of cough drops over there.
Oh my gosh, that would make your stomach hurt for sure.
You think so?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
I'm really hungry.
I think I am escaping to see family this weekend.
Where are you
Pretty
going?
excited about that.
Out of town or in town?
See out of town. Gonna get to see one of my siblings and shocker, go to a swim meet at the same time.
Weird.
But I really like swim meets.
Yeah.
The beauty of this one is because it's out of town, the expectation to help with all the things is minimal because we're not the host. When we're the host, while I'm happy to help, it is a lot of work. So it's actually less work to go elsewhere. You just have the travel time. But yeah, it should be fun. It's going to be blistering hot. But such
yes,
is
like
life. I know you
103 or something.
Not where we're going. It's
Okay.
actually going to be less than here, which I was like, oh, if it's hot here, it's going to be super hot there. Not true. It's actually a little bit better. Their forecast is a little better.
I was just in a meeting with someone who was at a meeting in Sioux Falls, and because of all the flooding, the mosquitoes are absolutely atrocious. So if you're headed that way, you better bring some.
We are not headed to an area that flooded. So yeah, that's, I believe it. Yuck. Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh. Feast or famine, man. Either it's you have more rain than you can stand, or we're in like drought conditions.
We are in drought conditions.
There's often not a lot of in between.
Which is weird because it does keep raining, but it's like.
But it gets dry
It's
real
dry
fast.
before it hits the ground. Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. If you like what you heard, please share with a friend, rate, review.
5 stars, please. Helps other people find us.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had some really interesting things happen lately. We don't know if it's because of the podcast or something else that we're doing, but random donors from different parts of the country, like every week, giving money to the cause. And we have no idea how. We'll take it because we need all the help we can get.
Yeah.
But the way the podcast world works is if you give us a 5-star review, it starts to say, oh, you like True Crime Podcast, or you like this. It's, hey, you might also like the Escape Pod.
Yeah.
And people find us that way. So
that would be great. You can help us that way. You can check out our website at escapepod.live. Follow us on our socials. Reach out at justbecause@escapepod.live. Or, of course, share your own story of escape at escapeartist@escapepod.live.
Yeah, I don't want to be the only one.
Did I just say escapepod.live? I did. Escape pod.
Well, you could also escape
with a
pod
D.
if you need to. If you have a problem. I don't know the help center number right now, but yeah, I've been hanging out here with all the like charity stories, and I don't want it to be my stories. I still have a lot that we haven't delved into, but I'd really rather share some other people's stories. And it doesn't have to be like big successes either. It can be like, still struggling with this, or I'd like to escape, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So
plenty of that out there for sure.
Plenty of that.
We are closing the hatch on this episode of the Escape Pod. Remember, trauma may be inevitable. How you grapple with it, though, is optional.
So stay resilient
and keep laughing.
Bye, everybody.